he wanted me to preach, I think that he got a little lazy and didn't want to preach himself. If I'm not speaking loud enough or I'm speaking too fast, let me know. I can change the speed. I have spoken a few times in front of churches for different things. I've been a pastor's kid for 16 years of my 19 years. But the most memorable one is when I turned 13. I went to Fiji with my father, and I came back, and that morning, being a pastor's kid, you do not get much time to prepare. My father said, I want you to get on stage, and I want you to talk about Fiji. And I was like, awesome. And I was planning, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? And as soon as I was walking up on stage, I thought I should leave my cell phone down in the pew. And I said, no, never mind. I get up on stage, and it rings. And being 13, I answered it. And I said, I'm in front of the entire church. I have to go. And I hung up on them. So as a late Christmas present, early birthday present, I'm handing my phone to my mother.
Yeah.
So she doesn't have to deal with that anymore. Now, I know that the bulletin said that I was going to be talking about Ecuador, but there are a lot of things that have led me to be going to Ecuador for 4 months. That's not a normal college kid thing. Most college kids don't leave the university and study somewhere else. And to the best of my knowledge, I've found that there are two things that have kind of made me who I am and given me the drive for missions that I have. The first thing that has made me who I was is the molding that I've had from the people and the places in my life. Ask anyone who knew me. As a child, I was very ADD, still am, and a brat. I was one of those screaming children, and you could ask my Aunt Jan, and she would tell you plainly that that's exactly who I was. But while growing up, I was surrounded by very good people. I have two grandparents who have been together 62 years?
61.
61 years. Still a long time. They have been ministers for about that long. My parents were in the ministry together. They had a good marriage. I have 3 uncles that are pastors, correct? Yes. And to the best of my knowledge, all of my cousins are in the ministry in some way and all following God. This is what I grew up in. If I, personally, with my big, loud personality, was put into any other family, I'm not quite sure I would have survived, nor do I think they would have survived. So, the first people that I really think have shaped me is my grandparents. You know them as Bob and Joe, the people that sometimes lead this service, but I know them as Bob and Joe, the pastors, and the grandparents. Meemaw and Papa. They were never Grandpa and Grandma, they were Meemaw and Papa. Some of the things that really touched my life is they would feed the hungry people of Seattle. They would go down every Sunday and set up a line, and all of the homeless people would line up, and their church would take the initiative to feed them. And I would come down up sometimes from Oregon, and I would feed them. And little things like that when I was growing up shaped who I was and changed me as a person. It's really important for kids to be doing these types of things, no matter how much they complain, because being a 19-year-old, I can obviously say that shaped me as a person. I went to Oklahoma. I go to a small church, and I was talking to a lady there. She and her husband took me under their wing, and they took me out to Chinese food one day, and we were talking, and I was telling about my grandparents and some of the things that they'd done. And I said that they had served food in Seattle, and we started talking, and they're like, I knew someone that served food in Seattle too. And we started comparing notes there. We realized that my grandparents, my grandfather in particular, married them 30, 40 years ago. And they now play the piano at my church all the way in Oklahoma. This is how big my family is, and this is how much we've reached around the community. The other people that have really helped me, of course, is my parents. My mother right here. Hi, Mom. Love you. Through them, I have learned ministry. Now, when you think of ministry, you think of people talking in front of you. Well, that is one part of ministry, but when you are, 5 through 12, what this means is stuffing Easter eggs on Easter, because you have to fill your own eggs before you find them. And that was a big part of my ministry. It's the only thing I could do at that age, really. If you've looked around, there's banners hanging out around the church. Those were made by my mother and me and my sisters back in Hood River. Yeah. Other small church projects that we've done over the years. One of the big parts of my life is I want to travel as much as possible. This is something that I've wanted to do for a very long time. You never got to meet my father. I don't know if any of you have. Well, Miss Beulah might have. No?
I don't think so.
I don't remember that.
Okay. Well, my father had decided when we were kids that he was going to take each and every one of the 3 girls on a separate missions trip. This led to me going to Fiji when I was 13. This is a huge part of my life that has changed my perspective, has changed who I was, has changed how I see other people and the needs of this community and the world. These people have poured into my life and made me who I was today. And I can honestly say, without them, I would not be who I am today. No matter how imperfect I know that I am, I would not be who I am today if it wasn't for them. My grandparents, my aunts and uncles, and my parents have shown me what good relationships are, what good marriages look like, and what it is to stick with your faith through difficult times, screw-ups, and sins. I would like to say that my training as a Christian stopped there, but as you can see, it didn't. I have my mother, my father, my grandfather, my grandmother, my mother, my grandfather, and my grandmother. Let's try that again. I here tonight, but I am missing my father. My mom, my grandfather, and my grandmother, my aunt, and I all lived in the same house because when I was 16 years old, my father passed away of colon cancer. You know me as the daughter of Bob and Joe, but I have spent most of my life being known as the pastor's daughter of the Hood River Church of the Nazarene. That was a long time ago. 3 years ago. That's a long time ago for me. I'm only 19. I was reading in Streams in the Desert. It was a devotional book. And one of the poems in it, I left my book in Oklahoma. It'll be traveling here over the summer. But it's all about people who are gold and have impurities in them and how the Father heats them up and fires them so they can remove all the impurities. And we were singing How Firm a Foundation, and we read, I'm going to have to find it here. Oh, goodness. Well, can't find it right off the top of my head, but it talks about the fire, the refining fire that God puts us through. And it is a beautiful thing to sing, but it is really hard to contemplate because I can sing it off key because I never learned how to sight read. But it's a really hard thing to think about. When I was 9 years old, my father fell ill with stage 4 colon cancer. And if you know anything about cancer, there's 4 stages in most cancers. Well, I was 9. I don't know if any of you know a 9-year-old, but if you could just picture them, it's really young. I hadn't lost all my baby teeth yet. I hadn't had my first kiss yet. I hadn't even reached middle school. I was in 5th grade. I hadn't had my first kiss yet. Don't worry, Mom. But my world went from this big to this big. One of my favorite artists, her name is Kimya Dawson, and she wrote this song about this earthquake that had happened a couple years ago. And couple of lines are, "So please give me a break from all your complaining about who was mean to you and how your stepdad is a pain. I care, I swear, but not today. All I can think about is tsunamis and earthquakes." And it's basically describes my life, not that I have tsunamis and earthquakes, but it describes how everyone else was kind of here. They were worrying about who liked them in middle school, who did this, who did that, do I have the right clothes, did my parents get me the Christmas presents I wanted? But I was a 9-year-old worrying about death, worrying about the bigger picture, where am I going to move when my father dies, what am I going to do, and all that gets thrown together into one. And if you've ever had